The rain was a steady, relentless drumming against the roof of my car. Each drop that slid down the windshield blurred the world outside into a watercolor of bleeding streetlights and deep, dark shadows. I was parked across the street, engine off, the cold of the November night slowly seeping through the glass. My breath fogged the window in a small, pale cloud. I wiped it away with the sleeve of my coat, my eyes fixed on the house, their house. A warm, golden light spilled from the living room window, a perfect square of domestic bliss in the surrounding darkness. I saw their silhouettes move inside, a man and a woman. He reached for her, and she leaned into his embrace. It was a simple gesture, familiar and intimate, an embrace I knew better than my own reflection. From this distance, they were just shapes, faceless and nameless. But I knew the way his hand would rest on the small of her back. I knew the way she would tilt her head, resting it on his shoulder. My heart didn't break. It had already been shattered into a million pieces. This was just the dust settling. They say the truth will set you free, but they never tell you what it destroys first. They don't tell you that freedom can feel a lot like being lost in a cold, empty darkness with no map to guide you home. But that night, that cold, rainy night, was still 6 months away. 6 months ago, my world was still whole. It was perfect. 6 months ago, it was autumn in Maple Creek, Illinois. The air smelled of damp earth and wood smoke. The maple trees that gave our town its name were on fire with color, lining the quiet streets in brilliant shades of red and gold. Our house, a 2-story colonial with dark blue shutters, sat on a street where kids left their bicycles on the lawn and neighbors waved as you pulled out of the driveway. It was the kind of life I had always dreamed of, a life so picturesque it could have been a painting. My world revolved around two people, my husband, Mark, and our son, Leo. Mark was the sun my little planet orbited. He was handsome in that easy, confident way that made people naturally gravitate toward him. He had a laugh that could fill a room and a smile that always made me feel like I was the only person he saw. He was a regional sales manager, which meant he traveled a few days a week, but he made every moment he was home count. He'd leave little notes for me on the bathroom mirror. He'd call every night from his hotel room, just to hear about my day and to say goodnight to Leo. He was a good man, a good husband, a good father. I never, for a single second, doubted that. And then there was Leo, my beautiful, bright-eyed, 5-year-old boy. He had his father's charming smile and my curious eyes. He was the center of my universe, the tiny, powerful anchor that held my life in place. I worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, a job that allowed me to be there when he got off the school bus, to help him with his crayon masterpieces, and to read him 3 bedtime stories instead of 1. My studio was a small, sun-filled room off the kitchen, and through the open door, I could hear the rhythm of our life, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of Leo's cartoons, the jingle of our dog's collar. It was a simple, beautiful soundtrack. Our life wasn't just the 3 of us. We were part of a set, a perfect 4-pack. Just 2 streets over lived Mark's younger brother, David, and his wife, Isabella. David was the opposite of Mark in many ways. Where Mark was charismatic and outgoing, David was quiet and thoughtful. He was a high school history teacher who spoke about the past with a passion that made you feel like you were there. He was gentle and kind, with a deep, unwavering love for his wife that was plain for everyone to see. He looked at Isabel, our Bella, as we all called her, like she had personally hung the moon and stars in the sky just for him. And Bella was my best friend. She wasn't just my sister-in-law. She was the sister I never had. We'd met through Mark and David years ago, and our bond was instant and deep. She was a nurse, compassionate and steady, the kind of person you could call at 3 in the morning, and she'd listen without judgment. We had our weekly coffee dates, our shopping trips to the city, our long talks on the phone that covered everything and nothing. I told her things I never even told Mark. She was my confidant, my cheerleader, my other half. Our 2 families were intertwined. We spent almost every weekend together. Summer barbecues in our backyard. The smell of grilled burgers mixing with the sweet scent of cut grass. Cozy winter nights crowded around David and Bella's fireplace, drinking hot chocolate while the snow fell outside. We even took family vacations together, renting a cabin by a lake in Wisconsin every July. Our lives were woven together so tightly. It was impossible to see where one family ended and the other began. Mark and David were brothers. Bella and I were sisters. And Leo adored his Uncle David and his Auntie Bella. It was perfect, so perfect that sometimes I would just stop and feel this overwhelming wave of gratitude wash over me. I'd be watching Mark push Leo on the swing set, his laughter echoing in the crisp autumn air, and I'd think, this is it. This is everything. Of course, looking back now, I can see the cracks. They were so small, so fine. You would have missed them if you weren't looking. And I wasn't looking. Why would I? There was that one time at a 4th of July party. Mark and Bella were standing by the drink table, talking. I was walking over to join them when I saw it. He said something, and she laughed. A genuine, uninhibited laugh. As she did, she playfully swatted his arm. He caught her hand, and for a split second, their fingers stayed laced together. It was just a moment, a tiny, insignificant moment. Then they saw me approaching, and their hands dropped. They smiled at me, pulling me into their conversation as if nothing had happened. And nothing had. I told myself, it was just a friendly, fleeting touch. Another time, we were all out to dinner for David's birthday. The conversation turned to college days. Mark and Bella had known each other briefly before I came into the picture. As they'd attended the same university for a year, David started telling a funny story about a disastrous chemistry class he and Mark had taken. Mark laughed and looked across the table at Bella. "Remember Professor Albright's terrible toupee?" he asked her. She grinned back. "How could I forget? You called it the squirrel." They both burst into laughter. A private, shared memory that momentarily excluded David and me. It wasn't mean-spirited. It was just separate. A tiny little world that only the two of them inhabited. David just smiled, used to their shared history. I felt a tiny, illogical prick of something. Jealousy. No, that wasn't right. It was more like curiosity. A sense of being on the outside of a joke I didn't understand. But then Mark reached under the table and squeezed my hand, and the feeling vanished as quickly as it came. I dismissed these moments. I filed them away in a mental folder labeled overthinking, because that's what it was. My own insecurity, bubbling up for no reason. I had a loving husband. I had a wonderful family. I had a best friend who was like a sister. To doubt any of that would be to doubt the very foundation of my happiness. And my happiness was real. It was solid. It was unshakable. I remember one particular Saturday afternoon, just before everything changed. It was late October. The four of us were in our backyard, raking the last of the fallen leaves into huge, colorful piles. Leo was ecstatic, diving into the piles and throwing handfuls of leaves into the air, his giggles like little bells. David was trying to get him to help, pretending to be a leaf monster, which only made Leo shriek with more delight. I was leaning against the old oak tree, a mug of warm apple cider in my hands, just watching. Bella came and stood next to me. "Look at them," she said, her voice soft. She was smiling, her eyes fixed on David and Leo. "He's going to be such a good dad someday." I smiled back at her. "He already is. He's the best Uncle Leo could ask for." "I know," she said, nudging my shoulder with hers. "We're lucky, aren't we?" I looked from her to the scene in front of us. David, covered in leaves, chasing our son, and Mark, my Mark, walking toward us with that smile that always made my heart skip a beat. He handed Bella a mug of cider, his fingers brushing against hers. "We're the luckiest," I replied, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. He wrapped his arm around my shoulders and kissed the top of my head. His other hand rested for a moment on Bella's shoulder. A comfortable, Familiar gesture. We were a unit. A team. The four of us. We stood there together. The setting sun casting long shadows across the yard. Watching the two people we loved most in the world play amongst the dying leaves. It was a perfect autumn day. The last perfect day. I didn't know it then. Of course. I didn't know that our perfect world was as fragile as a dried leaf, about to be crushed under the weight of a single, innocent sentence. I didn't know that the truth wasn't a light that would guide me, but a fire that would burn my entire world to the ground. I just stood there, warm and safe in my husband's arms, feeling incredibly, unbelievably lucky. Leo's 5th birthday arrived on a crisp, cloudless Saturday in early November. It was the kind of day that felt like a gift in itself. The sunlight, thin and golden, streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The house was alive with the buzz of anticipation. Red, blue, and yellow balloons were tied to every chair, and a giant happy birthday banner, which I had designed to look like a superhero comic, was stretched across the living room doorway. The morning was a happy blur of controlled chaos. I was in the kitchen, putting the finishing touches on a 3-layer chocolate cake, Leo's absolute favorite. Bella was beside me, her brow furrowed in concentration as she meticulously arranged fruit on a platter, creating a rainbow of strawberries, melon, and grapes. "Do you think this looks okay?" she asked, holding up her creation. "Or is it too much?" "It's perfect, Bells," I said, smiling as I swirled the last of the fudge frosting onto the cake. "You have the patience of a saint." She laughed, a light, musical sound that filled the kitchen. Says the woman who just spent 2 hours making a cake from scratch. I would have called the bakery after the first broken egg. We worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the easy rhythm of our friendship making the task feel less like work and more like fun. Outside, I could hear Mark and David laughing. They were setting up the new trampoline in the backyard. Leo's big surprise, the sound of their voices, the familiar banter between brothers, was the background music to my happy life. By 2 o'clock, our house and yard were filled with the joyful noise of children. Leo's entire kindergarten class seemed to be there, running in circles, their faces sticky with juice and excitement. Parents mingled on the deck, sipping cider and enjoying the last vestiges of autumn warmth. Mark was the life of the party, effortlessly charming, organizing a game of tag that had all the kids shrieking with glee. David, ever the gentle soul, was sitting on the grass with a small group of quieter children, showing them how to make a blade of grass whistle. I stood on the edge of the deck, watching it all, my heart so full I thought it might burst. Bella came up behind me and handed me a glass of iced tea. "You did it," she said, her voice warm with admiration. "The perfect party for the perfect 5-year-old. We did it," I corrected, clinking my glass against hers. She squeezed my arm. "He's so happy, Clara." I looked over at my son, who was currently being chased by his father. Leo's face was pure, unadulterated joy. His laughter was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. In that moment, everything was right. Everything was exactly as it should be. Later, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long, dramatic shadows across the yard, it was time for cake and presents. We all gathered in the living room, the children sitting cross-legged on the floor in a semicircle round Leo, their eyes wide with anticipation. Leo sat on a chair, his own personal throne, a lopsided paper crown perched on his head. He tore through his gifts with the typical frenzy of a 5-year-old. A Lego spaceship from his grandparents, a remote control car from a school friend, a set of dinosaur action figures from David and Bella, which earned them both a sticky, enthusiastic hug. Finally, there was just one gift left. It was a large, flat rectangle, wrapped by me in bright blue paper. It was from all of us, me, Mark, David, and Bella, a professional art kit, complete with paints, colored pencils, and a giant sketch pad. Leo loved to draw. His creations, a vibrant and chaotic collection of stick figures and colorful blobs, were taped all over our refrigerator. He carefully unwrapped it, his little tongue sticking out in concentration. "Wow," he breathed, his eyes shining as he looked at all the colors. "Do you like it, buddy?" Mark asked, kneeling beside his chair. Leo nodded vigorously. "I'm going to draw a picture of our whole family. Right now." We all laughed. Of course he would. He immediately opened the sketch pad, pulled out a black crayon, and set to work on the floor, his brow furrowed with artistic focus. The adults resumed their conversations, the party slowly winding down. After about 15 minutes, Leo jumped up, holding his finished masterpiece. "I'm done," he announced proudly. The room quieted down again as we all turned to look. It was a typical Leo drawing, 4 big stick figures and 1 small one, all holding hands under a smiling yellow sun and a squiggly blue sky. "Oh, honey, that's beautiful," I said, my heart swelling. "Tell us who everyone is." He pointed a chubby finger at the tallest figure. "That's Daddy." Then to the one with long, scribbled brown hair. "That's you, Mommy." He pointed to the smallest figure in the middle. "And that's me." "What about those two?" David asked, pointing to the other 2 adults in the picture. "That's you, Uncle David," Leo said, pointing to a figure with glasses drawn on. "And that's Auntie Bella." Bella knelt down to get a closer look. "I love it. Sweetie, you made me look so pretty." She kissed his cheek. Leo beamed, his chest puffed out with pride. Then he pointed to the 2 figures in his drawing, his father and his aunt. There was something odd about how they were drawn, closer together than the others, their heads tilted toward each other. And then he said the words, the simple, innocent, world-shattering words. "Look, Mommy," he said, his voice loud and clear in the suddenly quiet room. "Daddy is giving Auntie Bella his special kiss, the quiet one, like he gives you in the kitchen when he thinks I'm asleep." The air in the room changed. It was instantaneous. It was like a window had been thrown open in the dead of winter, letting in a blast of icy air that froze everything in its path. For a heartbeat, there was absolute silence, a silence so profound I could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Then, a laugh. It was Mark, a little too loud, a little too forced. "Oh, buddy," he said, ruffling Leo's hair. "What an imagination you have. Auntie Bella and I were just whispering a secret about your present." Bella laughed too, a high, nervous sound that didn't sound like her at all. "That's right, Leo. We were being sneaky. You can't go telling our secrets." She glanced at me, her smile bright and brittle. It didn't reach her eyes. David chuckled, completely oblivious. "A special kiss. I think Daddy's in trouble," he joked, winking at me. I felt like I was watching a scene from a movie. My body was present, but my mind was floating somewhere above, watching myself perform. I felt my lips stretch into a smile. I heard my own voice, sounding strangely distant, say, "That's a very, very good drawing. Sweetie, let's go hang it on the fridge." I took the drawing from his hands, my fingers feeling numb and clumsy. The stick figures seemed to mock me from the page. I walked into the kitchen, my movements stiff and robotic. The party resumed behind me, the bubble of silence broken. The moment passed, for everyone else, but for me, time was still frozen on that one horrifying second. His special kiss, the quiet one. I knew exactly what he meant. Sometimes, when Mark would come home late from a business trip, he'd find me in the kitchen, making a late-night cup of tea. He'd come up behind me, wrap his arms around my waist, and press his lips to the side of my neck, just below my ear. It wasn't a passionate kiss. It was soft, silent, and deeply intimate. A secret greeting. Our quiet kiss. My hand trembled as I stuck a magnet on the drawing, placing it in the center of the refrigerator door. I stared at it, at the 2 figures drawn too close together. Leo's words echoed in my head, over and over again. "The quiet one. The quiet one." My stomach twisted into a cold, hard knot. It was a child's fantasy, I told myself. A misunderstanding. He must have seen them hugging or whispering, and his 5-year-old brain filled in the rest. It had to be. There was no other explanation. I took a deep, shaky breath and forced myself to turn around, to walk back into the living room, to put the smile back on my face. The rest of the party passed in a haze. I moved. I talked. I smiled. I cut the cake and served it, my hands steady. I thanked the parents for their gifts as they collected their children. I hugged David and Bella goodbye at the door. It was a wonderful party. Clara, Bella said, her hand on my arm. Her touch felt strange, alien. I looked into her eyes, searching for something. A flicker of guilt, a hint of a lie. But all I saw was the same warm, friendly gaze she always had. Or maybe I just didn't want to see anything else. Thanks for all your help, I said, my voice sounding normal, even to my own ears. When the last guest had left and Leo was finally tucked into bed, exhausted and happy, the house fell silent. Mark came into the kitchen as I was loading the dishwasher. He wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, just like he always did. He rested his chin on my shoulder. Great party, he murmured. I flinched, just a tiny, involuntary tightening of my muscles. But he felt it. He loosened his grip. Everything okay? You seem quiet. I kept my back to him, focusing on rinsing a plate. Just tired. It was a long day. Kids are crazy, right? He said, his voice laced with manufactured cheerfulness. The things they come up with. The quiet kiss. Where does he get this stuff? I didn't answer. I just kept washing the dishes, the running water a loud roar in my ears. I could feel his eyes on my back. He was waiting for me to laugh it off, to agree, to close the door on the awkward moment and lock it shut. But I couldn't. The seed had been planted. A tiny, poisonous seed of doubt, dropped into the perfect soil of my happy life. And in the suffocating silence of my kitchen, I could already feel it beginning to grow. The days that followed Leo's party were a study in surreal normalcy. On the surface, nothing had changed. The sun rose and set. I made breakfast. I walked Leo to the school bus. I sat at my desk and tried to work on logos and brochures, the colors on my screen feeling mockingly bright. Mark went to work, called when he was on the road, and came home with takeout on Fridays. We were a portrait of a happy family, but beneath the surface, a tremor was running through the foundation of my world. And every single day, the cracks grew wider. Leo's words became a ghost in our house. They lingered in the quiet spaces, echoing in my mind when I was alone. His special kiss, the quiet one. I would be washing dishes and the phrase would just pop into my head, sending a jolt of ice through my veins. I would wake up in the middle of the night with the words on my lips, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The drawing stayed on the refrigerator, a constant, cheerful accusation. I couldn't bring myself to take it down. It would seem too deliberate, too meaningful. So it stayed there, a crayon-drawn testament to the moment my peace of mind had been shattered. Sometimes I'd find Mark looking at it, his expression unreadable, before he'd quickly open the fridge for milk, breaking the spell. I became a detective in my own life. It was a role I never wanted, a slow and agonizing descent into a version of myself I didn't recognize. My first target was Mark's phone. It was a sleek, black rectangle that now seemed to hold all the secrets of the universe. For years, it had lain on the nightstand between us, a harmless piece of technology. Now, it felt like a locked box. The first time I picked it up, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. It was 2 a.m. Mark was asleep beside me, his breathing deep and even. I crept out of bed and took the phone into the bathroom, closing the door as silently as I could. I sat on the cold tile floor, the phone's glow illuminating my face. My heart hammered against my chest. I felt sick, like a trespasser, a thief. But the need to know was a physical hunger, a gnawing emptiness in my gut that demanded to be filled. I knew his passcode. It was our anniversary. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. My finger hovered over the screen. What if I find something? What if my whole life is a lie? And then, the more terrifying thought, what if I find nothing? I typed in the numbers. The phone opened. I scanned his text messages first. There were conversations with clients, a group chat with his college friends filled with stupid jokes, messages from his mother. I scrolled down to Bella's name. My breath caught in my throat. I opened the thread. It was painfully, disappointingly normal. Hey, can you guys bring paper plates to the barbecue on Saturday? David's car is making that weird noise again. Does it sound familiar to you? Happy birthday to my favorite big brother-in-law. There were a few pictures of their dog, a goofy golden retriever. It was all mundane, all innocent. I checked his call logs. The same. I opened his email, work, junk mail, and a shipping notification for my birthday present. I checked his photos, hundreds of pictures of Leo, dozens of me, and a handful of photos from our family gatherings. There was nothing, absolutely nothing. Not a single misplaced word, not a single suspicious photo. He was clean, too clean. I sat there on the cold floor for almost an hour, a wave of confusion and shame washing over me. He was innocent. It was all in my head. Leo was a child with an overactive imagination, and I was a paranoid, untrusting wife. I felt a momentary rush of relief, followed by a deeper, more unsettling feeling. If it was all in my head, then I was the one who was broken. I put the phone back on the nightstand, my movements precise. Mark stirred in his sleep, rolling over. He didn't wake up. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling wider awake than ever. The relief had faded, replaced by a cold, hard suspicion. They were just too careful. This wasn't the work of a clumsy, spontaneous affair. If this was happening, it was something else entirely, something calculated, something that had been hidden for a very, very long time. My obsession grew. I started watching them, not just Mark, but both of them, at our next Sunday dinner, held at David and Bella's house. I was no longer a participant. I was an observer. I watched from across the table as Bella passed the salad bowl to Mark. Their fingers didn't touch. They barely made eye contact. But I saw it, or I thought I saw it. A flicker, a split second of awareness that passed between them. An invisible current of energy that no one else in the room could feel. Was it real, or did I just want to see it? Bella was telling a funny story about a patient at the hospital. Everyone was laughing. I was smiling, but my mind was racing. I was dissecting every word, every glance, every gesture. When Mark got up to help David with the grill, he walked behind Bella's chair. His hand rested on her shoulder for a brief moment as he passed. A friendly, brotherly touch, the kind of touch he'd given her 100 times before. But now, it looked different. It looked possessive. It looked practiced. My interactions with Bella became strained. How could I sit across from her at our favorite coffee shop and pretend everything was normal? How could I listen to her complain about David leaving his socks on the floor, when all I wanted to do was scream, "Are you sleeping with my husband?" We met for coffee the following Tuesday. I almost canceled, but that would be a deviation from the routine. That would be an admission that something was wrong. So I went. I sat there, stirring my latte, the foam dissolving into a sad, brown swirl. "Is everything okay, Clara?" she asked, her brow crinkled with genuine concern. "You seem distant lately. Is it a tough project at work?" Her concern felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Was she that good of an actress? Or was I truly losing my mind? "Just tired," I said, the lie coming easily to my lips. It was my new mantra. "Leo's been waking up a lot at night." "Oh, poor thing," she said, her voice dripping with sympathy. 5 is a tough age. So many big emotions in such a little body. We talked for an hour, but it felt like a performance. I was playing the part of Clara, the happy wife and best friend, and she was playing the part of Bella, the caring sister-in-law. Or maybe she wasn't playing a part at all. Maybe she was just being herself. That was the most maddening part. I had no idea what was real anymore. The change in me was undeniable. I was losing weight. There were dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. My work, once my creative outlet, now felt like a chore. Deadlines I would have normally met with ease were suddenly impossible mountains to climb. I was irritable and distracted. I snapped at Leo one afternoon for spilling his juice, and the wounded, confused look on his face broke my heart. I pulled him onto my lap and held him tight, burying my face in his hair, apologizing over and over again. I was becoming a person I didn't like, and I felt powerless to stop it. Mark noticed. Of course, he noticed. One evening, he came into my studio. I was staring blankly at my computer screen, the same design element selected for the past 20 minutes. He leaned against the doorframe. "Hey," he said softly. "You've been in here for hours." I shrugged, not looking at him. "Lot of work to do." He walked over and stood behind my chair, his hands resting on my shoulders. I fought the urge to pull away. His touch, once a comfort, now felt like a brand. "Clara, talk to me," he said, his voice gentle. "You haven't been yourself for the past couple of weeks. Not since Leo's party. You're stressed. You're barely sleeping. Maybe you should take a break. We could go away for a weekend. Just the two of us." His concern was the perfect mask. It was so convincing, so loving. For a second, I almost believed him. For a second, I thought, he's right. I'm just stressed. I'm letting a silly comment from a 5-year-old ruin our lives. But then he said, "You're working too hard, pushing yourself too much." And just like that, the doubt was gone, replaced by a cold, chilling certainty. He was giving me an out. He was creating a narrative for my behavior that had nothing to do with him, nothing to do with Bella. He was gently, kindly, telling me that the problem was me. He was making me the crazy one. I turned in my chair to face him. I looked into his eyes, the eyes I had loved for almost a decade, and I searched for the man I married. But all I could see was a stranger. "Maybe you're right," I said, my voice flat and emotionless. "Maybe I just need some rest." He smiled, a relieved, loving smile that didn't reach his eyes. "That's my girl." He bent down and kissed my forehead. "Everything's going to be okay." But as he walked out of the room, I knew it wouldn't be. The silence in our house was no longer empty. It was full of unspoken words, of carefully constructed lies. I was living with a man I didn't know and grieving a life I hadn't even officially lost yet. I had no proof, no evidence, nothing but a gut feeling and the echo of a child's whisper. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that it wasn't enough. I needed more. I had to find something real. I just had no idea where to look. The first real cold snap of the year arrived, stripping the last of the stubborn leaves from the trees and leaving the branches bare and skeletal against a perpetually gray sky. The change in season mirrored the chilling transformation inside me. The suspicion that had started as a fragile seed was now a hardy, sprawling vine, its tendrils wrapping around every thought, strangling every happy memory. My search for proof had become a quiet, desperate obsession. I checked everything: credit card statements, GPS history in the car, even the pockets of his laundry. I found nothing. It was like chasing a ghost. My salvation, and my damnation, came on a bitterly cold Saturday morning. Mark was away on a 3-day business trip to Denver. Leo was at my mother's for a sleepover. The house was unnervingly silent, the kind of quiet that amplifies the frantic noise inside your own head. I couldn't sit still. I tried to work, but the cursor just blinked mockingly on a blank page. I tried to read, but I read the same sentence over and over without absorbing a single word. I needed to do something, anything, to channel the nervous energy that was making my skin crawl. I decided to tackle the garage. It was a chaotic mess of forgotten projects, old furniture, and boxes that hadn't been opened since we moved in. It was a task so monumental it would surely distract me. I put on an old sweatshirt, pulled my hair back, and opened the door to the cold, dusty space. For hours, I worked with a kind of manic energy. I sorted old paint cans. I broke down cardboard boxes for recycling. I organized tools onto a pegboard. It felt good to create order out of chaos, to have a tangible result for my efforts. By late afternoon, I had cleared a path to the back wall, where a stack of boxes was piled high, labeled in Mark's familiar, masculine script, college memorabilia. I hadn't planned on opening them. They were his history, his life before me. But as I reached up to move the top box, my hand brushed against something else tucked behind it, wedged between the boxes and the wall. It was a wooden box, small, about the size of a show box, and made of a dark, polished wood. It wasn't a cardboard moving box. It was something personal, something meant to be kept. Curiosity, sharp and insistent, pierced through my cleaning-induced haze. I pulled it out. It was heavier than it looked. There was no lock, just a simple brass latch. I hesitated for a moment, the box resting on my lap. This felt different from checking his phone. This felt like a deeper violation. This was a deliberate archaeology of his past. But the need to know, the desperate, clawing need that had been my constant companion for weeks, was stronger than my guilt. I took a deep breath and lifted the latch. The first thing I saw was a photograph, faded and slightly curled at the edges. It was a picture of Mark and Bella. They couldn't have been more than 19 or 20. They were sitting on a dorm room bed, surrounded by textbooks. Mark had his arm around her, and they were both laughing, their heads closed together. He was looking at her with an expression of such open, unguarded adoration that it stole the breath from my lungs. It was not the look of a friend. It was the look of a boy deeply in love. My hand was trembling as I lifted the photo. Beneath it were more photos, dozens of them. Mark and Bella at a football game, her face painted with the team colors. Mark and Bella studying in a library, her head resting on his shoulder as she slept. Mark and Bella at a formal dance, his hands on her waist, their foreheads touching. In every single picture, they were a unit, an inseparable pair. There was an intimacy, a comfortable, lived-in closeness that radiated from the faded images. Where was David in all of this? Where was I? My heart felt like a block of ice in my chest. I dug deeper into the box. Underneath the photographs were letters, bundles of them, tied together with faded red ribbon. The envelopes were addressed to Mark, the return address a university dorm. The handwriting was feminine, a looping, elegant cursive I recognized instantly. It was Bella's. With numb fingers, I untied the ribbon on the first bundle and unfolded a piece of paper. The date at the top was from 12 years ago, 1 year before I met Mark, 1 year before Bella started dating David. My dearest Mark, the letter began. I can still feel your arms around me from last night. I keep replaying it in my head. The way you looked at me by the lake. I know we're supposed to be sensible. I know you have your future to think about, and I have mine. But when I'm with you, all that sensible stuff just melts away. Nothing feels as real as you. Nothing. I grabbed another letter. From a few months later. I hate this. I hate seeing you walk around campus and having to pretend we're just friends. I hate that we have to steal these moments, these hours. Everyone thinks I'm falling for David. He's so sweet. Mark, he's a good man. And that makes this 1,000 times worse. He looks at me with such trust in his eyes, and all I can think about is you. Sometimes I feel like I'm going to break in two. My vision blurred. The words swam on the page. I felt a wave of nausea so powerful I had to lean against the garage wall to keep from falling. I frantically tore through the rest of the letters. It was all there. A secret, passionate love affair that had started in college. They had hidden it from everyone, including their closest friends and, most painfully, from David. And then I found the last letter, the one that explained everything, the one that took the broken pieces of my understanding and reassembled them into a monstrous, unrecognizable truth. Mark, it's the only way. You know it is. We can't keep doing this. We're going to get caught, and we're going to destroy him. David is your brother. He worships you. And he loves me. If he ever found out about us, I can't even think about it. But I can't live without you. I've tried. The thought of moving away, of you meeting someone else, of never seeing you again, it's not a life I can imagine. So this is the plan. It's crazy, but it's the only one we have. I'll say yes. I'll marry him. I'll be a good wife. I swear I will. But I'll be your sister-in-law. I'll be in your life. Always. We can be family. We'll be so close. No one will ever suspect a thing. We'll be in plain sight. We just have to be careful. We just have to be smart. We can still have each other. Mark, in our own way. Please tell me this can work. Please tell me I'm not crazy. Please tell me you still love me enough to do this. Forever yours, Bella. I dropped the letter as if it had burned my fingers. It fluttered to the dusty concrete floor. I couldn't breathe. The cold air in the garage was thick and suffocating. It wasn't an affair. It was so much worse than that. An affair is a mistake, a betrayal born of weakness. This was a plan, a cold, calculated, decade-long deception. My marriage, my friendship with Bella, David's entire life with the woman he adored. It was all a lie, a carefully constructed stage play designed to allow the two lead actors to be together. David and I weren't people. We were props. We were collateral damage in a love story that wasn't our own. Every memory I had of the four of us was suddenly tainted, rewritten in the light of this horrific truth. The shared laughter, the family dinners, the vacations. It was all a performance. Every kind word from Bella, every loving gesture from Mark. It was all part of the act. The casual touches, the inside jokes, the fleeting glances I had dismissed as paranoiathy were real. They were their secret language, their way of communicating right in front of our unseeing eyes. And Leo's words from his birthday party, the quiet kiss. It wasn't a fantasy. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was something he had seen, a stolen moment of truth in a lifetime of lies, witnessed by the one innocent person in our lives. I slid down the wall and sat on the cold floor, surrounded by the evidence of my shattered life. The garage, once a symbol of domestic clutter, now felt like a tomb. I didn't cry. The shock was too deep, the pain too immense for tears. It was a hollowing out, an emotional void where my heart used to be. I sat there for a long time as the sun went down, the garage growing dark and cold around me. I was holding Pandora's box, and I knew, with a terrible, soul-crushing certainty, that my life would never, ever be the same again. The silence of the house was a physical weight. After the discovery in the garage, I moved through the empty rooms like a ghost, the wooden box clutched to my chest like a sacred, terrible relic. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark living room, the letters and photographs spread out on the coffee table in the pale blue glow of a passing car's headlights. They were no longer just paper and ink. They were the architects of my ruin. For 2 days, I existed in a fog of shock and grief. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just stared at the proof of the life that had been stolen from me. When my mother called to check in, my voice was a monotone, a flat line of feigned normalcy. I told her I had a migraine. It wasn't a complete lie. The pain behind my eyes was a dull, throbbing hammer, a physical manifestation of the agony in my soul. On Monday morning, I knew I couldn't hide in the darkness anymore. Leo would be home from my mother's that evening. I had to function. I had to pretend. But before I could face my son, before I could face the world, there was something I had to do. The rage that had been frozen inside me by shock was beginning to thaw, and it was demanding an outlet. But it wasn't Mark I wanted to confront. Not yet. Confronting him would be a storm of denials and lies. It would be a war. The person I needed to see was Bella, my friend, my sister, the co-author of this grand deception. I needed to look into her eyes and see if I could find a single flicker of the person I thought I knew. I sent her a text message, my thumbs feeling thick and clumsy on the small screen. Hey, free for a quick coffee this morning? Need to get out of the house. The casual tone almost made me laugh. It was a language from a different lifetime. Her reply came back almost instantly. Of course. The daily grind in 20. See you there. The cheerful little smiley face was a final, brutal insult. The daily grind was a small, quiet cafe on the edge of town, a place we rarely went. It was neutral territory. I arrived early and chose a table in the back corner, a small, secluded booth that offered the illusion of privacy. I placed a wooden box on the seat beside me, its presence a cold, hard weight. When Bella walked in, she was a vision of normalcy. She was wearing her nurse's scrubs, her shift starting in the early afternoon. Her brown hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she was smiling, a bright, easy smile that used to warm me like the sun. Today, it sent a chill down my spine. Hey, you, she said, sliding into the booth opposite me. She looked at my face, her smile faltering, replaced by a look of concern. Oh, honey, you look exhausted. Is your migraine still bad? Something like that, I said. My voice was calm, deceptively calm. All the roiling emotions inside meth rage. The grief, the betrayal had coalesced into a strange, icy stillness. A waitress came to take our order. Bella ordered her usual vanilla latte. I just asked for water. No coffee, Bella asked, raising an eyebrow. The world must be ending. Maybe it is, I said softly. She frowned, finally sensing that this was not a normal coffee date. Clara, what's wrong? You're scaring me. Did something happen with Mark? With Leo? I didn't answer her directly. Instead, I looked out the window for a moment, gathering my thoughts. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to dismantle her world with the same quiet, calculated precision she had used to dismantle mine. Do you remember when you first met David? I asked, my voice conversational. The question surprised her. Yeah, of course. It was at that university pub night. Mark introduced us. That's right, I said, nodding slowly. Mark introduced you, and you thought he was sweet, a little nerdy. But sweet. Clara, where is this going? She asked, her voice tight with confusion. I was just thinking about the past. I continued, my gaze steady on hers, thinking about college, about how you and Mark were at Northwood University together for a year. You must have known each other pretty well back then. I saw it, a flicker of panic in her eyes. It was tiny, almost imperceptible, but it was there. Her mask of friendly concern was beginning to crack. Not really, she said, a little too quickly. It's a big campus. We had some mutual friends. That's all. She was lying. I knew it, and she knew that I knew. The air between us grew thick with unspoken words. That's funny, I said, my voice still quiet, still even, because I got a very different impression. I reached down and lifted the wooden box from the seat, placing it on the table between us. I didn't open it. I just let it sit there. The dark, polished wood seemed to absorb all the light in the room. Bella stared at the box. The color drained from her face. She looked from the box to my eyes, and in that moment, she understood. The charade was over. Her carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down. Her hands, which had been resting on the table, began to tremble. What is that? She whispered, but her voice was hollow. She knew. It's a box of memories. Bella, I said. Mark's memories. Of a girl he was in love with in college. Of stolen moments by a lake. Of secret letters. Of a desperate plan to keep her in his life, no matter who it hurt. Her face crumpled. It was a complete and total collapse. The confident, composed woman I knew dissolved into a frightened, cornered girl. Tears began to stream down her cheeks, silent and hot. She didn't try to deny it. She couldn't. The proof was sitting right between us. Clara, she choked out, her voice breaking. I can explain. Can you? I asked, my voice hardening for the first time. The ice inside me was beginning to crack, and the rage was seeping through. Can you explain why you married my husband's brother? Can you explain how you look me in the eye, day after day, And called me your best friend? Can you explain how you let David build his entire life around a lie? We were young. She sobbed, her words barely audible. We were stupid and in love, and we didn't know what to do. We didn't want to hurt him. We didn't want to hurt anyone. You didn't want to hurt anyone? I repeated the words, my voice dripping with disbelief. Bella, you built your happiness on the rubble of our lives. You used David. You used me. You used my son. You let an innocent, good man fall in love with you and marry you. Also, you could stay close to your real love. That isn't just hurting someone. That is a special kind of cruelty I didn't even know existed. I finally opened the box and pushed a bundle of her letters across the table. Her own looping, elegant handwriting stared up at her. It's the only way. It said, we'll be in plain sight. She recoiled as if the letters were on fire. Please, she begged, her eyes wide with terror. Please don't tell him. Clara, please. It would destroy him. He's a good man. He doesn't deserve that. The audacity of her plea struck me speechless. She was begging me to protect her husband from the truth of her betrayal. She was asking me to become her co-conspirator, to help her maintain the lie that had already cost me everything. I looked at this woman, this stranger crying in front of me, the woman whose shoulder I had cried on, the woman I had trusted with my deepest secrets, the woman I had loved like a sister, and I felt nothing, not pity, not sympathy, just a vast, cold emptiness. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Her tear-filled eyes followed me, pleading. You're right about one thing, Bella, I said, my voice as cold and sharp as broken glass. He is a good man, and he deserves a hell of a lot more than you. I left the box on the table. It was her history as much as it was Mark's. Let her drown in it. I walked out of the coffee shop without looking back, leaving her there with the ghosts of her past and the ruins of our friendship. The icy control I had maintained finally shattered, and as I walked to my car, the tears I had refused to shed finally came, hot and blinding. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, unadulterated rage. The quiet part was over. The storm was coming. The drive home was a blur. The familiar streets of Maple Creek looked alien. The cheerful, well-kept houses like facades on a movie set. My entire life felt like a movie set. When I got home, I walked through the door into a house that was no longer mine. It was just a collection of wood, plaster, and glass that contained the memories of a lie. The rage that had carried me through the confrontation with Bella slowly subsided, leaving behind a cold, heavy resolve. I knew what I had to do. There was no going back. There was no unknowing what I knew. I couldn't live in this house with him anymore. I couldn't look at his face. I couldn't breathe the same air. I went upstairs to our bedroom. His closet was neat and organized, a reflection of the meticulous care he took with every aspect of his life, including his deceptions. I pulled out his largest suitcase from the top shelf. The sound of its wheels rolling across the hardwood floor was loud and final in the silent house. I opened his drawers and his closet and began to pack. I worked methodically, without emotion. T-shirts folded neatly, sweaters stacked. I packed his work shirts, his casual clothes, his running shoes. I went into the bathroom and swept his toiletries into a bag. I was calm, my movements efficient. It felt like I was packing for a stranger. In a way, I was. With every item I placed in the suitcase, I was erasing him from my life. I was reclaiming my space. I left the packed suitcase by the front door, a silent declaration of war. Then, I went into the living room, turned off all the lights except for one small lamp, and I sat on the sofa, and I waited. Mark was due back from Denver that evening. His flight was scheduled to land at 7, which meant he'd be home around 8:30. I watched the clock on the wall, each tick a slow, deliberate beat, like a drum counting down to an execution. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't have a script. I just had the truth, and the cold, hard weight of it in my chest. At 8:45, I saw headlights sweep across the living room wall. A car door slammed. My heart, which had been beating steadily, began to pound against my ribs. I heard his key in the lock. The front door opened. Mark stepped inside, dropping his briefcase by the door. "Clara, honey, I'm home." He stopped dead when he saw his suitcase. For a long moment, he just stood there, his silhouette framed by the open doorway. He looked from the suitcase to me, sitting in the dimly lit room. I could see the confusion on his face, followed by a dawning, sickening understanding. He slowly closed the door behind him, the click of the latch echoing in the heavy silence. "What's this?" he asked, his voice cautious. I didn't move. I just looked at him. "You tell me," I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried across the room, sharp and clear. He took a few steps into the house, his eyes never leaving mine. "Clara, what's going on? Did something happen? Is Leo okay?" "Leo's fine," I said. "He's still at my mom's. I thought it would be better if he wasn't here for this." "For what?" he asked, but there was an edge of panic in his voice now. He knew. He had to know. "Talk to me. You're scaring me." "Am I?" I let out a short, bitter laugh that had no humor in it. "That's funny. I've been scared for weeks. But now I'm not scared at all." I stood up and walked over to the coffee table. I hadn't brought the box back from the cafe, but I didn't need it. The words were burned into my memory. "I was cleaning out the garage this weekend," I began, my voice steady. "You know, behind those old boxes from college, I found something. A little wooden box. A box full of memories." His face went pale. The confident, charming man I knew vanished, replaced by a cornered, desperate stranger. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "I found the pictures, Mark," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "And I found the letters. All of them. Bella's letters." I let the name hang in the air between us. A poisoned dart. "I know everything. I know about college. I know about the plan. I know that my entire marriage has been a lie." He sank onto the arm of a chair, his face in his hands. "Clara, no," he whispered. "Don't." I snapped, the ice in my voice finally breaking. "Don't you dare say my name. Don't you dare try to lie your way out of this." I spoke to her. I saw her this morning. She didn't deny it. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. It was a long time ago. We were kids. Were you kids when you got married?" I shot back, my voice rising. "Were you kids when you stood at the altar with your brother and watched him marry the woman you were in love with? Were you kids last month, last year, every single day that you lied to my face? Every time you kissed me? Every time you told me you loved me? I do love you, Clara," he insisted, standing up, taking a step toward me. "What Bella and I had, it's complicated. But what I have with you, with our family, that's real. Real." I laughed again. A raw, painful sound. "Nothing about this is real. It's a cage you built for yourselves, and you trapped me and David in it with you. Did you ever love me? Or was I just a convenient prop? The perfect wife to complete the perfect picture of your perfect, fake life?" Tears were streaming down his face now. "That's not true. I love you. I love Leo. Please, please don't do this. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can do anything." He reached for me, his hands outstretched. I recoiled as if he were on fire. "Don't touch me." The words were venomous. "There is nothing to fix. You can't fix a foundation that was built on a lie. It's over. Mark." He stared at me, his hope visibly dying in his eyes. The fight went out of him, replaced by a hollow despair. He knew I was right. He knew it was irreparable. And then, the doorbell rang. The sudden, cheerful chime was a shocking intrusion into the suffocating atmosphere of the room. We both froze, staring at the front door as if a bomb had just been placed on our doorstep. Mark looked at me, his eyes wide with a new kind of panic. "Who is that?" I had no idea. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the door on numb legs and looked through the peephole. My blood ran cold. It was David. He was standing on our porch, his shoulders slumped, his face pale and drawn. He looked awful. I looked back at Mark, my heart hammering in my chest. This was it. The moment I had been dreading. The moment the fallout from their selfish choices would finally hit the one person who deserved it least. I opened the door. "David," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" He looked past me, at Mark, at the packed suitcase by the door. His eyes were red-rimmed and filled with a desperate confusion. "Clara, Mark," he said, his voice cracking. I don't know where else to go. It's Bella. She's gone." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "She's gone. I came home from work an hour ago, and the house was empty," he said, his words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "Her car is gone. Some of her clothes are gone. She left a note." He fumbled in his pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. "It just says she's sorry, that she needs some time. That's it. She won't answer her phone." He looked from my face to Mark's, his expression pleading for an answer he didn't know he was asking for. "Did something happen? Did you guys talk to her today? Did she say anything? Do you know what's going on?" The room fell into a dead, suffocating silence. Mark stood frozen, a statue of guilt and shame. He couldn't look at his brother. He just stared at the floor. David's gaze settled on me. His eyes were filled with a desperate, trusting hope. He was looking at me, his friend, his sister, to make sense of his world falling apart. And in that terrible, silent moment, I had a choice. I could lie. I could protect him, just for a little while longer, from the ugly, devastating truth. I could say I didn't know, and help him search for his wife, all while knowing she had run away from the mess she had created. Or I could honor the man he was, the good, honest man who deserved better than a life built on lies. And I could tell him the truth. I could set him free, even if it meant destroying him first. The silence in the room was a living thing. It was thick and heavy, pressing in on us from all sides. David stood in the doorway, the crumpled note still clutched in his hand, his eyes searching my face for an answer, for any kind of reassurance. Mark remained frozen by the chair, a monument to his own betrayal, his gaze fixed on the floor as if he could will it to swallow him whole. I looked at David. I saw his kind, trusting face, now etched with panic and confusion. I saw the man who had taught my son how to ride a bike, the man who always brought me my favorite coffee when he came to visit, the man who loved his wife and his brother with a fierce, uncomplicated loyalty. He deserved the truth, no matter how much it was going to hurt. My lie would be a betrayal just as deep as theirs. I took a slow, deep breath. "David," I began, my voice quiet but steady. "Come in. Close the door." He did as I asked, stepping into the foyer, his eyes flicking from my face to Mark's, then back again. The atmosphere in the house was so charged with tension. He couldn't possibly miss it. "What is it?" he asked, his voice a low whisper. "Clara, you know something. Tell me." I didn't look at Mark. I couldn't. My focus was entirely on David. This was about him now. "Bella didn't just leave. David," I said, choosing my words with surgical care. "She ran away. She ran away because a secret she has been keeping for a very long time was about to come out." David's brow furrowed. "A secret? What secret? Was she in some kind of trouble?" I shook my head slowly. The denial was a physical ache in my throat. "Not that kind of trouble." I paused, the next words feeling like stones in my mouth. "David, Bella, and Mark, they have feelings for each other." I said it as gently as I could, but the words still landed like a physical blow. David recoiled, a small, involuntary jerk of his body. A look of profound disbelief washed over his face. He even laughed, a short, choked sound of pure denial. "What? No," he said, shaking his head. "No, that's crazy. They're brother and sister, just like you and I are." The comparison was a knife in my heart. "No, David," I said, my voice firm. They are not like you and I." He looked at Mark, who still refused to meet his eyes. "Mark," David's voice was a plea. "Tell her she's wrong. Tell her this is some kind of insane misunderstanding." Mark finally lifted his head. His face was a mask of utter devastation and shame. He looked at his brother, the brother who had trusted him completely, and the silent confession in his eyes was more powerful than any words could ever be. He simply shook his head, a slow, agonizing movement, and in that moment, David's world fell apart. I watched it happen. The denial in his eyes crumbled, replaced by a dawning, horrifying comprehension. The color drained from his face, leaving him a ghastly shade of pale. His body seemed to deflate, his shoulders slumping as if the very bones that held him up had turned to dust. He looked from Mark's guilt-ridden face back to my pained one, then at the packed suitcase by the door. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with brutal, merciless clarity. "For how long?" he whispered, the question barely audible. It wasn't directed at anyone in particular. It was a question for the universe, for the life he thought he knew. I was the one who answered. I owed him that much. I wasn't going to tell him the whole sordid story of their decade-long plan. That was a level of cruelty he didn't need right now. He just needed the core of the truth. "For a very long time, David," I said softly, "since before you were married." He let out a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. He staggered back a step, his hand flying to his mouth. He looked around the living room, at the photos on our mantelpiece of pictures of the four of us, smiling, on vacation, at holidays. He looked at them as if seeing them for the first time, each happy memory now a monument to a lie. "My whole life," he choked out. "My entire marriage." He turned his gaze back to his brother. The confusion and pain in his eyes hardened into something else. A cold, quiet rage. "You," he said, his voice low and trembling. "You stood beside me at my wedding. You were my best man. You toasted my happiness." Mark finally spoke, his voice hoarse with unshed tears. "David, I'm so sorry." "Sorry." David's voice cracked with a bitter, broken laugh. "You're sorry. You let me live a lie. You let me love her. You watched me, every day, knowing. Both of you." He looked back and forth between us, the two people who had just detonated his entire existence. He took a step toward Mark, and for a second, I thought he might hit him. But he didn't. He just stopped, his fists clenched at his sides, his body shaking. The betrayal was too deep for violence. It was a soul-deep wound that no physical act could ever address. Then, his anger seemed to drain away, leaving behind only a vast, empty despair. He looked utterly lost, a man adrift in the wreckage of his own life. He turned without another word and walked toward the door. "David, wait," I called out, taking a step toward him. He turned, his face a hollow mask of grief. "There's nothing left to say." "Clara," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw not just his pain, but a shared pain. We were the survivors of the same shipwreck. "I'm sorry," he said to me. "I'm sorry for whatever this has done to you." To Leo. And then he was gone, closing the door softly behind him. The sound of his car starting and driving away was the sound of a final, irreversible ending. The house was silent again, but this silence was different. It was the silence of a battlefield after the fighting is over, thick with the smell of smoke and loss. I turned to Mark. He was still standing in the same spot, looking at the door his brother had just walked through. He looked broken. A small, selfish part of me felt a flicker of satisfaction. But mostly, I just felt empty, tired. "I want you to go," I said, my voice flat. There was no more anger left, just a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. He looked at me, his eyes begging for something I couldn't give. Forgiveness, absolution, a way back. "Clara, please," he whispered. "Where will I go?" "I don't care," I said, and the coldness of my own words surprised me. "Go to a hotel. Go to a friend's house. Go find her. For all I care." But you can't stay here. This is my home. This is Leo's home. It is not yours anymore." He didn't argue. He knew it was useless. He walked to the door, picked up the suitcase I had packed for him, and opened the door. He paused on the threshold, his back to me. "I did love you, Clara," he said, his voice thick. In my own broken, messed up way, I really did. I didn't answer. Whether it was true or not, it didn't matter anymore. Love wasn't a word. It was an action, and his actions had proven that whatever he felt for me, it was never enough. He walked out, closing the door behind him. I listened to his car start, the sound echoing David's departure just minutes before. And then, there was only silence. I was alone, truly alone. I sank down onto the sofa, the same spot where I had waited for him just an hour before, an hour that felt like a lifetime. I wrapped my arms around myself, a poor substitute for the comfort I craved. The tears I had been holding back finally came, but they were not the hot, angry tears from before. They were quiet, desolate tears for the life I had lost, for the husband I never really knew, for the friend who had betrayed me, and for David, my sweet, kind brother-in-law, who was now out there somewhere, alone in the dark, facing the ruins of a life he had done nothing to deserve. The storm had passed, leaving nothing but wreckage in its wake, and I was left to stand alone in the ruins. The weeks that followed were a blur of logistics and lawyers, grief and paperwork. My mother brought a bewildered Leo home the next day. Explaining the situation to a 5-year-old was one of the hardest things I'd ever had to do. I didn't use words like affair or betrayal. I just told him that Mommy and Daddy loved him very much, but they weren't going to live in the same house anymore. He cried, his small body shaking with confusion, and I held him, my own tears soaking into his hair. My heart broke for him, for the loss of the perfect, stable world he had known. His innocence was the highest price paid for their lies. Mark and I communicated only through text messages and emails, sterile conversations about finances and visitation schedules. He didn't fight me on anything. He agreed to move out of state for a job transfer, a silent admission that his presence in Maple Creek was now untenable. He was a ghost in my life, a name on a legal document, a voice on the phone for his weekly calls with Leo. The love I once felt for him had evaporated, leaving behind a strange mix of pity and a cold, vast indifference. I heard nothing from Bella. She had vanished completely. Her phone was disconnected, her social media accounts deleted. It was as if she had never existed. I knew, logically, that she must have gone to Mark, that they were probably together somewhere, trying to build a real life out of the wreckage they had created. The thought barely registered. She was no longer a part of my story. My world became small and quiet. It revolved around Leo, my work, and the slow, arduous process of putting one foot in front of the other. The big, empty house echoed with the ghosts of our past life. I started sleeping in the guest room. I couldn't bear to sleep in the bed I had shared with Mark. Some days, the grief was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Other days, I just felt numb, a hollowed-out version of my former self. The only person I truly wanted to see was the one person I felt I couldn't call. David. I thought about him constantly. Was he okay? Was he eating? Who was he talking to? My pain felt selfish and small compared to the cataclysm that had ripped his life apart. He had lost not only his wife but also his brother and his best friend, all in one devastating blow. About a month after that horrible night, I was at the local park with Leo. He was scrambling up the slide. His laughter is small, bright sound in the chilly December air. I was sitting on a bench, wrapped in a thick coat, nursing a cup of coffee, and then I saw him. David. He was walking along a path on the far side of the park, his head down, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He looked thinner, and the easy, gentle smile that had always been on his face was gone, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. My heart ached for him. Before I could second-guess myself, I stood up and called his name. He looked up, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes, as if he wanted to turn and walk away. But he didn't. He hesitated, then slowly walked over to my bench. "Hi, Clara," he said, his voice quiet. "Hi," I replied. How are you?" It was a stupid, inadequate question. He gave a small, humorless shrug. "Getting by," he said. "You?" "The same." An awkward silence fell between us. We were two people who had once shared a deep, familial bond, now strangers navigating a minefield of shared trauma. "I sold the house," he said finally, looking off toward the frozen pond. "Closed last week. I'm in a small apartment across town now." "Oh," I said softly. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be," he said, his voice flat. "It wasn't a home. It was a stage. I couldn't stand being in it." He finally looked at me, his eyes holding a depth of pain that mirrored my own. "How's Leo?" "He's okay," I said, glancing over at my son, who was now digging in the sandbox. "He's resilient. He asks about you." A flicker of warmth touched his eyes. "Yeah, tell him his uncle says hi." We stood there for a few more minutes, making small talk about work and the weather. We didn't talk about them. We didn't need to. Their names were the ghosts that hovered in the cold air between us. As he was about to leave, I found the courage to say what I needed to. "David," I said, and he turned back. "I know this is hard, and I know seeing me probably reminds you of everything. But you're not alone in this. If you ever need to talk, or just sit in silence with someone who gets it, please call me." He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of the old David. A small, sad smile touched his lips. "Thanks, Clara. Same to you." That day in the park was a turning point. We started to talk. First, just a few texts. Then, a phone call. A few weeks later, we met for coffee. We didn't rehash the betrayal. We didn't need to. We talked about the future, about healing, about what it felt like to build a new life from the ground up. There was no romance between us. Nothing but the clean, strong bond of two survivors. We were the only two people on earth who truly understood the exact shape and weight of the other's grief. We were family, forged not by blood or by marriage, but by a shared, devastating truth. 6 months passed. Autumn had given way to winter, which had melted into a tentative spring. The trees in Maple Creek were budding with new leaves, a stubborn, beautiful promise of renewal. I was in the process of selling our house, the one with the dark blue shutters, ready for a smaller place, a fresh start for me and Leo. One rainy April evening, I found myself driving through a part of town I didn't usually go to, and then I saw his car, parked in front of a small, neat-looking apartment building. It was David's new place. On a whim, I pulled over across the street, killing the engine. I don't know why. I just felt a need to see that he was okay. A light was on in a second-floor window. I watched for a few minutes, the steady drumming of the rain on the roof a familiar, melancholic rhythm. Then, I saw silhouettes move inside, a man and a woman. My heart seized in my chest, a phantom pain from a past life. But then the shapes moved into the light. It was David, and the woman was his sister, helping him move a new bookshelf against the wall. They were laughing. He was laughing. A real laugh. One that reached the window and found me in my car. I didn't get out. I didn't call him. This was his life now. His new beginning. He didn't need me to be a part of it. Not tonight. He just needed to live it. And for the first time in a long time, he looked like he was. He looked like he was going to be okay. And in that moment, I realized I was going to be okay, too. They say the truth will set you free. That's not entirely right. The truth is a fire. It burns down your life, your home, your sense of self, leaving nothing but scorched earth. It doesn't set you free. It forces you to be free. It leaves you with no choice but to build a new life from the ashes. The truth didn't set me free. Not yet. But it showed me the door. It pointed toward an open road. I started the car. the engine humming quietly. I put it in drive and pulled away from the curb, leaving the warm, golden window behind me. The road ahead was dark and slick with rain, the path forward uncertain. But for the first time, I was the one choosing where to go. And that was a start.